are, as I said, our local lepidopterist. He is one of our more colorful natives. He is definitely a pollinator attractor. He is known locally as the butterfly guy, but he is actually a very renowned lepidopterist. He has contributed close to 1,000 citations to the Connecticut Butterfly Atlas. His work on mark recapture studies was cited in the book Swallowtails of the Americas, and his work in the Amazon forest in Nicaragua was featured in the Yale Environmental News. Vic and his wife, Rowena, have traveled the Western Hemisphere studying butterflies. They make an annual pilgrimage to, you might have to help me with this, the Montane, Chaparral, and Woodlands ecoregion in California.
That's bigger than I say. Mountains in California.
Okay. To study the effects of climate change on the native fauna. But Vic is most famous around here for his annual August butterfly walk, which is an event not to be missed. So please take it on.
For any of you who would like to pursue this subject of butterflies a little more deeply in Connecticut, these two books will be on display in the back. These are the books you want to get. You can't get them from me, but they'll at least get the name of them. One is the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection. That's the old name. I don't know what they call that department now, but this book is $20, and it's a thorough book on the butterflies of Connecticut. It's been called the best state guide to butterflies in the U.S. So definitely a great book with pictures of all our butterflies. Now, you might have noticed my hat, and I wanted to explain this. This is not really just a frivolous thing. This hat is actually what we call a flag, and I wear this hat whenever I'm in the tropics because male butterflies are attracted to color. When they're far away in the canopy of the forest and they're looking for a female, one of the things they notice is the color of the female they want to approach. So, us lepidopterists are trying to trick them, get that color, and attract them. To show you what we attract, these are what we attract, morpho butterflies. Wow. So, wearing my hat, I'll often have morpho butterflies come down and fly around my head. So, it's not the subject tonight. We're going to be talking about Connecticut, but it's always fun to talk about morphos. And when we did the atlas about 10 years ago, we incidentally got a morpho in New Haven. Someone spotted a morpho, reported it. Of course, nobody believed it. And we went back to the garden, and the morpho showed up several days in a row at the garden to nectar. So we figured it came in on some tropical fruit or something that was being imported, and that morpho hung around. So we actually have seen morphos in Connecticut, but don't have any expectations. There are other displays in the back which you can check out. Now, in order to talk to an audience, it's important that I establish my credibility. And butterfly people over the years have been kind of frivolous, panty waste. We haven't really been treated with a lot of respect. This is a long time running. Here we go back to England about 1750, and here we get the fly-catching macaroni. And the British were very divisive. They were very not very nice about Italians. They went to Italy a lot to enjoy the food and the scenery, but the people, they had some negative comments, and that comment was a macaroni. As you remember, Yankee Doodle, right? Yeah. What did he? He was a macaroni, right? Because he stuck that feather in his hat. That's all you had to do to be a macaroni back in those days. So here we have butterfly collectors are macaronis, and we fast forward to 2018 to Victor DeMasi, and here I am, and I'm of Italian descent, and I'm interested in butterflies. So in two ways, I'm qualified to talk on the subject, so I hope you realize you're with an expert tonight. Well, we want to talk about really kind of a little bit about the problems tonight, because this interfaces with the whole pollinator issue. And the aspect of butterflies as pollinators, it's not really well established how important butterflies are in the whole pollinating scene. We do know they contribute to pollination, but their importance, like bees and other really well-known pollinators, is not quite known. But in Connecticut, we have, because of the habitat changes that have been going on in the last century mostly, we are losing some of our fauna. I will talk a little about some that we've gained. We've made some positive gains too, but this is the Regan Fritillary, a real spectacular butterfly that was last seen in Ridgefield probably around 1950. And this occurred up in the Titticus area of Ridgefield, and it used the lupine. We had a native lupine that's disappeared, so when the plant disappeared, the Regan Fritillary disappeared. This butterfly, incidentally, needed cows and horses to be around, because what happened, it really liked trampled fields. And in the trampled fields often had thistle growing in them, and thistles would become abundant in the field because the cattle and the horses would not eat the thistle, so the thistle was favored. You can hear me okay, right? Thistle was favored, so thistle would start to overtake these pastures and stuff. It was the bane of farmers, but thistle stays flowering into late September and early October, and this butterfly needed nectar late into the season in order to reproduce. As those trampled fields began to disappear in Connecticut and all over the eastern United States, the Regan Fritillary began to disappear. It's now located only on a few locations. One of them is in central Pennsylvania on the United States Army tank range. And nobody goes out and messes with the butterfly there, as you can well imagine, because of unexploded ordnance. So this is a case where, you know, the U.S. military sites have actually become important reservoirs. In California, we were just out in Fort Ord, which has a wonderful place near Monterey, California, which is also a great reservoir of rare plants. Now, you know, if you think about the kind of wet meadows, these are around in our time, kind of little swampy little spots. Those are the most important for butterflies, and this is what's happened to a lot of them. This is a Phragmites, an invasive plant from the Danube Delta in Europe that's very popular there for thatching roofs and stuff, but it's become absolutely invasive in the United States, and it forms pure stands in wetlands. This is near the school up on, I think, Scotland School or something like that. This used to be a wonderful wetland in my memory, which is 40 years ago, and now it's a pure stand of Phragmites, and a butterfly. There is a butterfly that does eat this, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, today we're going to spend in my backyard. We're going to go to my backyard. This is part of a talk I give. I have a long talk on butterflies in my backyard. It goes into all about butterflies in Connecticut, but today we only 15 minutes, so we're just going to talk a little about the invasive problems. So this is my house in West Reading. If you come on walks, this is the first thing you're going to see. And if you look out my attic window, this is my backyard. It's a meadow. And this is really when we're talking about pollinator pathways, this is what we want to see. We want you to save this, create this, have this. This is where butterflies like to be. That's my wonderful spouse in the backyard, and this is our pollinator pathway midsummer. So we have, you'll see in the back, there's a butterfly collection. And, you know, the real estate agent, I was getting married, and Marilyn Sloper, if any of you know her, took me around, showed me houses all over Reading all day long. I didn't like any of them when I was a young man. She said, Victor, I have a dog, but it just might be right for you. So she brought me to this house, and the minute I drove up that driveway, I knew that that was my dog. And the first year there, I found a butterfly in my backyard, rare in the state of Connecticut, only known from 6 locations. Since then, over a 40-year period, we have observed and collected for the Peabody Museum at Yale half of the state fauna basically in our backyard. So state fauna is about 125, and we've gotten about 60 species in our backyard. So it's a great place for butterfly diversity. And I'm going to give you a little bit of biology here. You know, we have the butterflies start out as eggs, become caterpillars, become chrysalises, and then the chrysalis is just the most amazing thing. Now, the caterpillar, the deal about the caterpillar, Butterflies can only eat certain plants, like monarchs only eat milkweed family. So the caterpillar is really the feeding stage, and it's really the whole scene for butterflies. The butterfly's just there to reproduce. They look beautiful, but the caterpillar's the whole deal. They last 6 to 8 weeks, the butterfly maybe a week if it's lucky. So these caterpillars have to be, the egg has to be laid on the right plant, the caterpillar eats that plant voraciously, and then it becomes a chrysalis. Now, just imagine for a moment if you were sent from Mars, and you were said to document life on Earth, okay? And you were shown a caterpillar and a butterfly. Would you have any idea that those two are the same thing? No, they're completely different. And that's the real miracle of metamorphosis, that caterpillar goes into that chrysalis, and after a day just becomes muck. And I know it's muck because as a little kid I broke a lot of these things, unfortunately, and they were muck. And it completely reorganizes. In that muck is the memory, the genetic information to reorganize itself and come out as a butterfly a few days later. It is really the most fascinating thing in the animal world as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so here are the eggs. Eggs are so dependable to identify. You can look at the eggs and know which species of butterfly you're talking about. And all the butterflies have different strategies in laying their eggs. And working at the Peabody Museum, where I've been for 40 years, I helped there as a curatorial associate. It's fascinating what happens. One of my colleagues there has the most ancient egg known from the Jurassic period. They were cleaning dinosaurs, and we took some of the sand and put it underneath the electron microscope, and he found eggs of underwing moths from 60 million years ago. So he eclipsed, the oldest known egg up to that time was like, 100 years, and he went back 60 million, so he's pretty much hogging it, Okay, so this is a comma butterfly eggs. Now the caterpillar comes out. This is the monarch caterpillar. Quite obvious if you have milkweeds growing in your house, in your yard, you'll see this thing crawling around. It doesn't really try to hide or be elusive, and it's feeding on milkweed. It has to have milkweed to get by. If it doesn't have milkweed, it's not going to become a butterfly. This is the chrysalis of the tiger swallowtail, those big yellow and black swallowtails that everybody has in their garden. And these chrysalises are pretty interesting. If they're on like brownish things, they're brown. If they're on green leaves and twigs, they're green. So they're quite camouflaged. Now, going back to, I just want to show you this. This is the giant swallowtail. And this is kind of an interesting story. Now, we learned that caterpillars have to have certain food plants, right? The giant swallowtail, the caterpillar has to have a plant called xanthozylum or northern prickly ash. Now, northern prickly ash grows commonly in Connecticut. But the problem with northern prickly ash is that with the first frost, it turns to mush. And this caterpillar of this giant swallowtail feeds on, did I call it the black swallowtail? Like, it's the giant swallowtail. It feeds on the northern prickly ash, right? It has 2 generations in a year. So the eggs are laid early, they develop into adults in July, they fly around, they lay eggs, and the second batch, or the second brood, develops August into late September, okay? So if those eggs, if those caterpillars, they're getting ready to pupate to become chrysalises in late September, and if all of a sudden we have a frost, the northern prickly ash turns to mush and the caterpillars starve. So until recently, this butterfly was not in Connecticut. But now it is in Connecticut because we now have later frosts. We haven't had a frost in September in 10 years, and the giant swallowtail is now establishing state all over the state. Now, sometimes being in this butterfly business, you can get pretty aggravated. I had one Japanese woman who came to me at one of my talks and said, well, they feed on a plant from Japan also. Now, I want to just preface this. Okay, this butterfly is in Connecticut, And I get people calling me every year that they have them or have seen them. I have yet to see one in Connecticut. I've seen it in California, I've seen it in Georgia, I've seen it in Virginia, but I haven't seen it in Connecticut. So I'm pretty irritated about that. And this Japanese lady comes up to me after my talk and she says, well, I planted this plant from Japan and now I have half a dozen giant swallowtails in my yard all the time. So I said, well, that's very nice. She said, no, you don't understand. I have all these giant swallowtails in my yard. So I said again, well, that's very nice. She said again, no, you don't understand. Her husband interrupted at that moment in a very nice Japanese way and said, I think he knows that you have giant swallowtails and he doesn't. So we moved on before we had an international incident. Okay, so anyway, here is the West Virginia white. West Virginia white was a butterfly, not really ever really common in Connecticut, maybe a long time ago, but it's a butterfly of deep forests. And it grows where maple trees are pretty big, maybe 2-foot diameter maple trees with a good forest floor and everything. And it feeds on a plant called Denterium. Now, Denterium is a really odd plant that's a native of our New England forests. And Denterium is in the cabbage family. You'd never know it by looking at it. But chemically and everything, you can identify this plant as being as part of the cabbage family. Now, the West Virginia white comes out in early April to mid-April, flies around in the deep forest, so very few people were ever really tuned into this butterfly. It is not the cabbage white that you see eating your cabbage family members in your garden, such as the cabbage white butterfly, but it's a close relative. The caterpillar feeds on this Denterium, and happily, it's specialized on Denterium, which only occurs in deep forest. Years ago, 20, 30 years ago, they were using a lot of sand on the roads. And in my colony that I had in Topstone Park in Reading, it was probably a mile from the road. But the stream, there was a little stream that went through the habitat. And that stream carried sand from the road sand way into the deep forest. And what comes along that loves growing on sand but garlic mustard? Garlic mustard, we know we're going to see tons of this in a few weeks in our yard, this white flower, right? It's a member of the cabbage family. It's an invader from Central Asia. And it's got the same chemical signature as Denterium. So the butterflies, and this stuff can get common, like that. That's my backyard with, kind of some of this stuff. So, the butterfly comes along, tastes, the female scrapes the leaf with her claws, her tarsal segments, and it is cabbage family. So she lays her eggs, and the caterpillars starve. And in a very short period of time, I think we only have one colony left now in Branford, Connecticut, or someplace like that, where it's in very deep forest, very far from, garlic mustard. So this is how, something that affects the food plant can affect our species, our fauna. Now we have another one here in Reading. You might or might not have this. Oddly, it's abundant in West Reading, but seems to be not on Reading Ridge, and I say thank God. This is black swallowwort. It's a member of the milkweed family. Okay, black swallowwort does two things. I saw the first one in my yard about 1983, and I was all excited. Another plant for my field. Within about 3 years, the garlic mustard had, let's see. Look at the amount of seeds on one plant. This thing is prolific in production. Within a few years, my entire meadow was garlic mustard, and I've spent the rest of my life since then trying to get rid of it. Not successfully, but partially. Now not garlic mustard, black swallow. Black swallowwort is a member of the milkweed family. Milkweeds are for monarch butterflies, right? Monarch butterflies come along, taste this plant, make the same mistake, chemical mistake, lay their eggs, the eggs starve. They found in tests in Rhode Island that monarchs are mistaking this plant as the right food plant about 20% of the time. So although it's not super crucial. It's not good for the monarch butterfly. It's a host plant confusion. In my meadow, I had this, the black swallowtail, which is still common in gardens. You might have this if you have a garden. This feeds on the carrot family, and because this black swallowwort came along and crowded out my meadow, all the carrot family members, the wild carrot family members, disappeared, and now I have not seen the black swallowtail in my yard since about 1990. So, and it used to be common when I first moved there. This is another example. This is the Harris checker spot, and this was on this butterfly feeds on dock, wild dock, a plant that's really considered noxious by farmers, but lepidopterists like it. And again, where we've seen things like what do you call it there? Our Phragmites and our hot purple loosestrife. Right. These two together have teamed up to invade, overrun our wetlands, and the food plant dock has basically disappeared, and we haven't really seen Harris checker spot for years. One of the things we're going to look at just quickly before we wrap this up, I know I'm running over time. This is the monarch butterfly. We've heard a lot about this in recent years, and it is broken to some degree. Very sad if we end up losing this as our butterfly. And purple loosestrife, Phragmites, that has nothing to do with that. This is another butterfly here that has, this is an interesting story. This is the Baltimore, one of our really most spectacular butterflies. It's a wetland species, and it used to feed on turtlehead. And turtlehead, for some reason, has basically disappeared in Connecticut. But this butterfly managed to make a plant switch, and it now feeds on plantago, which is the plantains. And it was really a surprise, and at first we didn't even believe it, but now it feeds on plantago, so it went way down, and now it happens to be coming back, and we have some really strong colonies in red. There it is, plantago. You know this guy or girl in your yard, trying to get rid of it. Those are the credits for some of the photographs, so I will turn this over to the next speaker.